Hannity's America. Well, we're up to reason number 3 not to vote for Barack Obama for president. His problems with math when it comes to taxes and spending your money.
We're talking about Joe the plumber.
The conversation I had with Joe the plumber.
Joe the plumber.
Joe the plumber.
Joe the plumber.
With over 26 mentions of his name, Joe the plumber became the star of the last presidential debate. Joe's actually a regular guy who asked Barack Obama the really hard question and ultimately brought the Illinois senators' pie-in-the-sky promises back down to reality.
What's your name?
My name's Joe Wurzelbacher.
Good to see you, Joe.
I'm getting ready to buy a company that makes about $250,000, $270,000, $80,000 a year.
All right.
Your new tax plan is going to tax me more, isn't it?
I'm a plumber.
I work 10, 12 hours a day. If I buy another truck and add something else to it and, build the company, I'm getting taxed more and more.
It's not that I want to punish your success. I just want to make sure that everybody who is behind you, that they've got a chance at success too. Everybody's so pinched that business is bad for everybody. And I think when you spread the wealth around, it's good for everybody.
And Barack Obama has more big plans for the country if he becomes president.
Now is not the time for small plans. I will cut taxes for 95% of all working families. And I'll invest $150 billion over the next decade in affordable, renewable sources of energy. I'll invest in early childhood education. I'll recruit an army of new teachers and pay them higher salaries and give them more support.
He also wants to spend $65 billion a year on a new health care plan, $15 billion in green energy spending, $85 billion in tax cuts and credit, $25 billion a year in foreign aid, and $18 billion a year on education. The senator's long list of expensive ideas totals nearly $1 trillion in spending. So how is he planning to pay for all of this? Obama says one way is to raise taxes on the highest earners and give tax breaks to the lowest. In other words, people who don't currently pay taxes will actually receive money, a check from the government, right after the government takes it from people who make more. Obama calls that, quote, spreading the wealth around.
His plan gives away your tax dollars to those that don't pay taxes. That's not a tax cut. That's welfare.
Joe the plumber, well, he doesn't like that idea either. But Obama doesn't see it that way. He believes everyone should have enough money to live the way they want to, even if they can't afford it. So is that how he plans to manage the money for his other bright ideas, robbing Peter to pay Paul? Some in the international community are already concerned about Obama's proposed policies and are preparing for the fallout. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper and the President of the European Union, Nicolas Sarkozy, recently signed an agreement to start negotiations for a free trade agreement between them. According to an editorial in the Wall Street Journal, Barack Obama's promise to unilaterally rewrite the North American Free Trade Agreement if Canada and Mexico won't go along with his ideas on labor and the environment has not gone unnoticed in Ottawa. If Canadians are going to have a tougher time selling their goods and their services south of the border, well, then who can blame them for looking east, across the Atlantic to Europe? So Obama wants to energize our economy by scaring off other nations from doing business with the U.S. and giving hardworking Americans no incentive to do better for themselves. Canada's nervous, the EU is wary, and Joe the plumber, well, he's not happy. Even more troubling than Senator Obama's tax and spending plans is his inexperience in foreign policy, which brings us to reason number 2 not to vote for Senator Barack Obama for president. You might say that foreign policy is not presidential hopeful Barack Obama's strong suit. Even his running mate, Senator Joe Biden, recently warned supporters at 2 different rallies to expect an international crisis if, in fact, Obama wins in November.
Mark my words. It will not be 6 months before the world tests Barack Obama like they did John Kennedy. The world is looking. We're about to elect a brilliant 47-year-old president of the United States of America. Remember I said standing here, remember anything else I said. Watch, we're going to have an international crisis, a generated crisis. To test the mettle of this guy.
It sounds like Senator Joe Biden is pretty sure an Obama presidency would provoke our enemies and spell trouble for the U.S. So what exactly is Obama's foreign policy anyway? Specifics are hard to come by, but throughout his campaign, Barack Obama has said that he's the one that has what it takes to deal with rogue nations, and he's the one who can restore our reputation around the world. But what foreign policy background does Barack Obama actually have? He's been a U.S. Senator for only 4 years. Before that, he was an Illinois state senator. Not too many foreign policy issues there, and a community organizer before that. Many of his supporters believe Senator Obama's multicultural background and childhood years living in Indonesia give him a unique perspective on world affairs. But Obama's former opponent, Hillary Clinton, expressed serious doubt about that. She said, quote, "Voters will judge whether living in a foreign country at the age of 10 actually prepares one to face big, complex international challenges the next president will have to face. I think we need a president with more experience than that." One of the most disturbing displays of Obama's lack of foreign policy expertise came during last year's YouTube debate. The junior senator from Illinois gave what many called a naive answer to a question from the audience about whether he would meet with the leaders of Syria, Venezuela, Cuba, or North Korea without preconditions.
The notion that somehow not talking to countries is punishment to them, which has been the guiding diplomatic principle of this administration, is ridiculous.
Obama was widely criticized for that remark, which may be why he hasn't given any real specifics of his foreign policy plans since. Until this year, he'd only been to Iraq once, and that he finally made it to Afghanistan, and those visits seem more like photo ops than anything else. Some say when it comes to foreign policy, Barack Obama is actually the new Jimmy Carter. The former peanut farmer turned president was also a relative unknown that came along and promised to bring that magic word change. But Americans found out the hard way that Carter wasn't cut out for the highest office in the land and actually did more harm than good. Maybe Barack Obama would bring change to this country, but is another Jimmy Carter what anybody had in mind? Now, so far tonight, we've given you my top 9 reasons why you should not vote for Senator Barack Obama. Now, my number 1 reason is coming up next, straight ahead.